Welcome to the Best Little Town Podcast, your go-to source for everything happening in the town of Bedford's local government. Whether it's new initiatives or important decisions shaping our town's future, you'll hear it right here. This podcast is dedicated to keeping our residents informed and engaged.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, May 20th, currently 10:20 a.m., and my name is Bart Warner, Town Manager of Bedford, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this episode of the Best Little Town Podcast, a concerted effort of the town of Bedford in cooperation with our current media partners, Media Squatch, to provide greater access and information to the business activities of our town council. This is a podcast we record every day after regular council meetings when they occur. And so since I'm joining you on May 20th, that means we had a council meeting last night on May 19th. And without further ado, we will jump right into the agenda and work through that sequentially. Of course, all meetings begin with approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, and that was also the case last night. Should mention that Mayor C.G. Stanley was not present at the beginning of the meeting. He is actually out of town on a previously scheduled vacation. We do let council members do that from time to time. So the unanimous vote to approve the minutes was 6-0 with Mayor Stanley absent. Next item of administrative business was the report of the town manager. I noted that since the speed limit on Longwood Avenue has been affirmed at 25 miles per hour, staff will proceed with restriping to reduce the width of the lanes and promote voluntary compliance. And basically what we mean by that is, and we hear it from a lot of folks, this particular stretch of Longwood Avenue between roughly Peak Street and Oakwood Street is pretty wide expanse of asphalt. And, with our planning hats on, we know that people tend to drive as fast as they are comfortable driving without paying attention to their speed. So wider pavement typically promotes higher speeds, and we see that behavior a lot, even though we would prefer for people to do 25 miles per hour because it's a residential neighborhood. So council took action last month. Actually, maybe would have been the meeting prior to this. There was a question about elevating the speed limit, which kind of relates to the width of the pavement, but council decided to keep it at 25 miles per hour. So basically what we're planning to do in cooperation with our partners at Hurt and Profit is something similar to Route 122 south of 460 heading toward the lake. Of course, I know that's not really popular with some folks, but basically we're planning to install a left turn only lane in the center and then have the through traffic one lane on each side to reduce the practical width of the travel lanes on Longwood Avenue and hopefully assist people with driving 25, which is what we would prefer. So that's the background for that. I also noted that town offices will be closed on Monday, May 25th in observance of the Memorial Day holiday. Given Bedford's patriotic character and historic background, there are a lot of events in conjunction with Memorial Day. I think the Bedford Boys Tribute Center and the Bedford International Alliance have some activities at our cemetery on Memorial Day in recognition of the Bedford Boys. Of course, the National D-Day Memorial will have an observance on Memorial Day itself at 11 o'clock a.m. Next item of business on the agenda was appearances before council. We did have 3 people sign up to speak. First was Mr. Tim Black, who lives on Mountain Avenue. He was addressing the repair activity performed by the Bedford Regional Water Authority within the public rights-of-way. The Water Authority does a really good job of repairing water and sewer line breaks when they occur. They also have some capital projects to address things, but one inevitable outcome of that is they have to cut the pavement typically, and sometimes they cut it across the whole length of the road. And oftentimes those patches are not at the same quality as the pavement was before. So Mr. Black noted that activity and noted that the temporary patches at times are sinking or not at the same level of the rest of the pavement, and that does have bad impact on vehicles and on motorists. A recent example he cited was on Lake Drive, where the Water Authority recently conducted some repair work. Mr. Black noted that that was just resurfaced as of yesterday, the day of the meeting, and the resurfacing was adequate, and Water Authority's contractor did a good job. There are still some sidewalks where this activity also takes place, and frankly, that's something that we expect the Water Authority to take care of as well. So town staff will be following up on those issues too. Mr. Black noted that he had brought this item to the attention of the town's representatives on the Water Authority board. And the issue he had was really the time standard involved. We all understand when things need to be fixed, but for the final repair and restoration of the functioning of the pavement and the streets, it would be good for the public to know what to expect. Mr. Black suggested a 3-week time frame for final pavement and making citizens aware of that. And he also noted that there is difficulty in meeting that kind of standard in the wintertime, given the nature of paving businesses and the material that is available then. But still, really, Mr. Black noted that it was a matter of meeting citizens' expectations, and that was his request. The next speaker was Pastor Bill Owsley, who identified himself as serving Trinity Baptist Church. He shared some insights based on Proverbs chapter 29, verse 2, and noted that God does consider people who are called, and he thinks about those folks and mentioned that when considering the calling of council members to serve in their roles. He stated that when righteous people prosper, the people rejoice. And he noted that, in his view, the council members have an opportunity to serve and a responsibility to citizens, but also before God, and asked them to consider that. Mr. Owsley then offered a prayer on behalf of town council and the community. Next speaker was Ms. Ann DeLong, who is a resident of Clearview Road. Ann basically rose to recognize several people who worked to beautify Bedford in conjunction with the parade that took place this past Saturday, but also just in general, efforts to dress up our Centertown area. She reached out to several folks and noted that she got an overwhelming response. The people who did work to dress up the town were creative and also took the opportunity to provide some educational opportunities, particularly in some of the storefront windows downtown, even with vacant buildings. Ms. DeLong shared her view that this demonstrates what can be accomplished when goodwill, trust, and effort are undertaken and the town comes together. She recognized the value of at least 70 in-person volunteers and really talked about probably hundreds of people beyond that when you talk about the organizations involved. Ms. DeLong was gracious enough to recognize several individuals and organizations that were present, and I tried to keep up with that in my notes, but there were so many of them, frankly, I couldn't write that fast. So would encourage people to revisit the video account of the meeting, which is on youtube.com. If you go to YouTube and search for Town of Bedford, Virginia, you can find all of our town council meetings recorded. And I would encourage you to watch last night's to see the folks recognize that Ms. DeLong called out. And also some of the folks there spoke out for the fact that they appreciated Ms. DeLong's effort to organize this great creative response to community need. That item of business on the agenda being complete, we then moved on to council comments. First to speak was Councilman Jay Ippolito, who also thanked all the people who contributed to the weekend events, the parade that took place on Saturday, May 16th, as well as the decorations of downtown in general. He recognized the organizers of the parade and noted that it took a lot of work to organize and carry that event off. Mr. Ippolito shared his insights from being a participant in the parade. Jay mentioned that he rode in a vehicle as a member of council, and that was quite an experience. He enjoyed seeing all the folks along the way. He said the town really showed up and the appearances were all good, and he was very proud of the way things turned out. The next council member to speak was Councilman Todd Foreman. He also commented on the May 16th parade and recognized both the Moose Lodge and the American Legion as the institutions that were largely behind some of the organizational efforts there. Also recognized Ann DeLong for her work and thanked Pastor Bill Owsley for his prayers. He also noted the work of our Bedford Police Department officers in conjunction with the parade and expressed his appreciation. Next to speak was Councilman Stacey Haley, who thanked everyone who was physically in attendance at the meeting. Also shared his favorable view of the parade and thanked all the organizations that participated. He also noted that Mr. John Barnhart was in the audience. John is a reporter with the Bedford Bulletin who is a faithful attendee of our meetings, and John had a recent health issue that had prevented him from being with us, but last night was his first opportunity to be with us in person, and John looked good, and Stacey welcomed him back and noted that he appreciated his presence. Councilman Dave Foster, again, was talking about the events from the past weekend and talked about how encouraging it is to see people come together, and shared his view that that's what Bedford is all about. He extended thanks to Ms. Ann DeLong and all participants and shared his view that we keep the momentum going. He also thanked all groups who organized the event itself and the efforts of the Bedford Police Department and the Public Works Department to assist with the event. Councilman Dwight Evans thanked all who were watching on YouTube and covering the meeting virtually. He also appreciated the folks who were there in person. He also extended thanks to Ann DeLong for her efforts and her efforts to make the storefronts more presentable. Shared his view that even some of the vacant storefronts had attracted interest from people who were hoping or expecting that there was actually something happening within those. Dwight noted his appreciation for volunteers in general and also thanked Pastor Bill Owsley for his words in prayer. Finally, Vice Mayor Darrell Updike expressed his views to everyone who was present and also the people who participated in the events. He thanked Pastor Bill Owsley for his comments and noted that he agreed with them. Darrell noted that the comments he'd heard about the parade were all positive, and he was happy to see people here in town along the parade route. He also recognized the Central Virginia Business Coalition and Heather Alto for her assistance in directly organizing and getting the parade started. He recognized Ann DeLong and all the volunteers and kind of echoed the comments of Dave Foster in that he hopes that we will continue to move the community forward in a positive manner. Next was a report of council committees, which there have not been any since our last meeting. Next item was revisions to the agenda. Councilman Todd Foreman requested that we add a discussion of the electric department operation as an item of new business, and there was no opposition to that, so we did add that to the new business agenda. Next item was a public hearing on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2026-2027. The budget has been posted appropriately and advertised and has been available for view. And last night, anyone who had a desire or willingness to speak about that was invited to do so. Ms. Ann DeLong came to the podium and noted that she had submitted comments in writing via email previously. And once we obtained her permission and clarification, we will attach her email comments directly to the minutes in the official record, which will be adopted, of course, at the next meeting. There were no other speakers in the public hearing, so the public hearing was closed. We then moved on to the discussion of the electric department operation that was added as an item of new business. Councilman Foreman began the discussion by sharing his observations about the financial situation of the operation, noting that a few years ago, the electric fund had a $14 million cash balance and reserve fund, and currently we were sitting at right around $7 or $8 million. He also noted some challenges in the business model of that and the cash flows, and that, we are dependent on recovering our costs from the users, which is challenging for everyone. there are some months when we do have a net cash flow that is challenging. We do have a reserve policy set at 25% of our total fund. So the electric department budget is typically, the electric fund is typically about $30 million, which means based on that, I spoke incorrectly last night. I said that we would need about 5 or 6 million to meet that 25%. It would actually be about 7.5 million, which is pretty much where we're sitting right now. So again, in all funds, we try to maintain an emergency balance of at least 25%. That means that if we're not receiving any revenues at all, we could continue to function for approximately 90 days. Councilman Dave Foster chimed in and said, shared his concerns about the fund balance going down, and some of the history of that is related to our costs for demand and the price cost adjustment, and the fact that we have not been recovering all of those costs from our customers, and in fact the town has been absorbing those. That's probably the single biggest source of the decrease in the fund balance in the electric fund. Councilman Foster shared his view that it would be good to develop some 5 to 6 year projections for financial performance of the department and strategic planning in general. Councilman Stacy Haley shared his view that financially, the electric department and the electric fund face challenges every year. We still have to pass along a lot of costs to our customers, and we probably need to talk about the general direction of that and the value of the organization to the citizens and businesses in general. And Mr. Haley raised the question of whether or not the town should consider getting out of the electric business. He did note that the former city of Bedford was involved in the water and sewer business and discontinued that activity when the Bedford Regional Water Authority was formed. Mr. Haley then went on to note that there are some capital needs that we've identified. There are some concerns about the underground electric grid downtown. On that note, I did take the opportunity to advise people of an outage we had yesterday related to a pole being struck on South Street, which actually took out power from approximately, I want to say about 10 o'clock in the morning till about 5 o'clock p.m. and affected pretty much all businesses downtown on the south side of Main Street from Washington Street all the way to Odie Street. Vice Mayor Darrell Updike chimed in and shared his view of trends in the electric business in general and the fact that electric costs are going up, and his view that, frankly, regardless of who is providing the service, that unless those fixed costs and demand costs are addressed, that electric costs for all customers of any company are probably going to continue to rise. Councilman Foreman then said that he did note that the electric department does a great job of keeping things running and particularly responding quickly and restoring service quickly, but also noted that we do need to have a discussion of the appropriateness of that activity and the cost, and suggested that we do think about the future and think about the long-term health of the operation. There was some discussion about some other things and affecting our costs. There are some things that were done in the past that we're still dealing with, and I spoke to that. Again, we have to purchase the power in advance that we use, that we do not generate. So that's always a challenge to do that at an appropriate cost and an appropriate level. And that's been a historic concern of the operation. I did note that back in about 2006, the then city of Bedford entered into some 40-year projects for generation. 2 of those were coal-fired. 1 was a natural gas plant. Again, our responsibilities for those projects run through 2046. And at the time, those seemed like a very good idea. And frankly, we do still see some generation from those projects. Now, I will mention that one of the coal-fired plants never was constructed due to a shift in the regulatory environment at the federal level. Shortly after that contract, the one coal-fired plant was never built, but there were sunk costs that were incurred because of the contract that the city then and now the town continues to have to address. The other coal-fired plant is in the state of Illinois, and that state has decided, in addition to the federal regulations, that they would like to see that plant discontinue operation about 10 years ahead of time when it's supposed to go offline. So we have an obligation to pay through 2046, but the state of Illinois has indicated that they intend to shut that down through their regulations in 2036. We also have, as part of those 40-year purchases, access to natural gas generation from a facility in Ohio. That is functioning currently. That does have value. And again, it's hard to foresee what will happen in the future given the rapid changes in the market. But so far, that contract is serving its needs in the way we expected it. We also talked about the fact that the town electric department is not immune to things. We are aware of the activities of several other electric operations, some investor-owned and some public. We noted the fact that we've adopted a $10 surcharge for the next 2 years to recover costs from the PCA. We are aware of the fact that Dominion Power, which is a neighboring investor-owned utility, has done something similar. They have added a $1 a month charge to all their customers for the next 10 years. So again, we talked about the fact that they can do that based on their own projections and confidence that they can meet a 10-year time frame in that and can spread those costs in that way. We also noted the nature of the demand costs and the fact that, again, a lot of the issues are we're just not generating enough power or as much as there is demanded. And eventually that may lead to some unfortunate outcomes. In addition to high prices, things like brownouts and even blackouts. But again, it's all a matter of the value of the existing generation facilities. A lot of those are regulated by PJM, which is a regional oversight organization, which is also, we think, at least, overseen by the federal government. But we are aware of the fact that American Electric Power is currently looking at withdrawing from PJM. You might hear about that group a lot. PJM basically serves to kind of be a watchdog over the very issue I just talked about, the fact that, demand continues to increase, but generation's going down. And PJM basically issues recommendations and rulings that involve what they call incentives to develop more electric generation projects. But essentially, they're also getting ahead of the costs if those projects do not materialize. So when we talk about the demand costs that the town is facing, it's not just the town, it's also investor-owned utilities such as that. And again, we're aware that AEP is actively talking about withdrawing from PJM and managing their own load. So we noted that we're aware of that. We're kind of seeing what that looks like. The question was, if they did that, what impact would it have on us? And candidly, we don't know, but my expectation is that PJM will, if they lose a customer, they'll kind of look to spread that cost to other customers, which would include any remaining members of PJM. So again, it's all kind of a macroeconomic issue there as well. We also noted a couple of other localities. The question came up of how many towns and local governments actively provide electric power services. To the best of our knowledge, there are about 15 throughout the Commonwealth. A lot of those are concentrated in our area of Virginia, South Side, Western Virginia, and Southwest Virginia. In particular, I shared my knowledge of the town of Richlands, which is a current AMP member. They are talking about withdrawing from AMP and are looking to employ a lawyer to help them negotiate that. Again, I mentioned some of the long-term contracts that Bedford has. The other participants in AMP did the same thing. Basically, AMP provides access to projects and generation where towns members otherwise cannot develop those themselves. And in the case of Richlands, they have a few projects similar to ours in coal and natural gas. They also, we're aware, have a couple of hydro projects. And, we discussed the likelihood of whether they could withdraw from AMP and get out of those contracts. And with the town attorney to my right, did say I didn't want to create difficulties for him, but My view was that probably any contract has some kind of escape clause in it, but the issue with these power generation projects is their relative value and who would be willing to take them on. So, again, if you engage a facility to generate power for 40 years and the person buying that power looks to withdraw, the operator has to find somebody else to take it over. In the case of coal and natural gas, currently those have great value in the market. So presumably if you were able to get out of those, somebody else would take over the capacity that's generated and be willing to pay for that. But in certain things like run-of-river hydro, which is highly variable and subject to the whims of nature, those are things that we know other communities have invested in that they may not be able to get out of. And one of the reasons we have not invested in those is that we have our own hydro plant up at Snowden on the James River. And again, a lot of people ask, why we don't generate more, but it's a run-of-the-river plant, which means it's subject to the level of the James River at any given time. And given the age of our facility, there's a definite bandwidth in terms of the level of the river at which we can generate power. Sometimes we have too much water and it simply overwhelms the turbines and doesn't turn them. And sometimes it's so low that it doesn't move them. So again, that's a challenge with run-of-the-river hydro. Folks may have heard recently about APCO's management of their dams at Claytor Lake and Smith Mountain Lake. Those are a little different. Where you impound the water, you have greater control over it. Still subject to issues such as drought, but and this may be part of APCO as part of AEP, part of AEP's response to PJM. APCO has indicated that they're going to be adjusting the water levels on the lakes, mainly giving people a heads up ahead of the Memorial Day weekend and recreational activities. But PJM is directing people to be prepared to generate even more power based on the higher temperatures and the increased demand for usage. So that was a pretty good discussion, impromptu, not really expected, but initiated by Councilman Foreman. And we did talk about the fact that at staff level, we continue to monitor these things. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about them publicly. And of course, we welcome input. If there's an approach or a good idea that we're missing, we would certainly like to hear about it. Also mention that we will be happy to start compiling this information in one place and sharing it publicly. And again, in an effort to let people know all the factors and challenges involved, because obviously as customers, we're all seeing these increased costs. And I did share the opinion too, that as much as we are dependent on our ability to just pass costs along, it is possible that at some point we have rates and costs to the customers that are prohibitive and that they simply can't pay. And so that's obviously not an ideal situation either. That discussion wound down, and then that concluded the last item of new business. The only other item was a closed session pursuant to the Code of Virginia for purposes of consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation, where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the town council, specifically relating to a real property matter. Again, we don't like to go into closed session. We prefer to do things in public. However, there are certain situations where the town needs to maintain a bargaining position that would be compromised if we were to discuss things in negotiations openly. A lot of times, and if we're trying to purchase something and we're trying to get the very best price, if we establish a budget for something, that's what we're going to pay, when we would love to actually reduce that price. Similarly, in this case, there has been an entity that has threatened litigation regarding a real estate matter. And obviously, if that happens, we want to be able to address that in a way that manages the town's risk. And so those conversations are taking place in closed session. Prior to going into closed session, Mayor Stanley, who was on vacation, did call in, which we appreciate because that gave us the opportunity to inform all 7 members of council at one time of the same information. Councilman Todd Foreman made a motion to allow Mayor Stanley to participate. That was seconded by Councilman Stacy Haley. Council then went into closed session for maybe 20 minutes or so before coming out and certifying that they had not taken any action and had not discussed any matters that were not covered by the notice. And with that activity concluded, the meeting was adjourned. For those who came out last night, we're always glad to have you. Again, council meets on the first and third Tuesdays of every month at 7 p.m. On the rare occasion when there is no new business or no pressing matters before council, those meetings are canceled, but those are few and far between. If you can't make it in person, we do live stream those, and we also make those available on youtube.com. And also the meeting minutes, once they are approved, are posted to our website at www.bedfordva.gov. Again, we're undertaking these efforts mainly to be as transparent as possible and provide as much information as we can. If there are any service issues, of course, we want to know about that. If there's any recommendations for improvement, please pass those along. You can call Town Hall during business hours at 540-587-6001, or you can email me directly at bwarner@bedfordva.gov, and we will be happy to attend to your questions and comments. The next regularly scheduled meeting is set for June 2nd, 2026 at 7 p.m. Good Lord willing, I will be joining you the day after to provide a recap of that, but if you can join us in person, we would be happy to see you. Till that time, I wish everyone all the best between now and then, a safe and enjoyable Memorial Day weekend, and we thank you very much for your presence and contributions to making Bedford the world's best little town.